Hello, everybody. You are listening to Startup Secrets for Entrepreneurs, and I am your host, Shelby Olischlager. Our mission here is to help entrepreneurs make a difference and navigate the messy world of startup or relaunch. Join me today where we dig deep with our guests to give you the best concepts and strategies to fast track your business. Today, our special guest is Janine Bolon. So, Janine, first, welcome, and just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, well, who am I? I'm what we call a Navy brat. So my father was in the military, and so I was raised all over this big blue marble that we like to call planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took me until I was almost 16 before I actually landed in the United States and understood that culture, because it was one of the biggest culture shocks for me was moving back to the US. So that's a little bit about my background. But I've always been creative. And, when I was 10 years old, I wanted an allowance and my parents didn't believe in that. And so they said I had to go out and make my own money if I wanted candy, right? So I started very young. I've been a serial entrepreneur ever since. I've run 17 businesses and a couple of nonprofits over the last 20 some odd years. Yeah.
Wow, love it. So I'm interested just to go back to the beginning. You say like this cultural shock. Was there anything that taught you that you've applied to your businesses moving forward?
Yeah, that it is, if you are willing to offer something that saves money, saves time, or makes somebody's life a little bit better, if you're willing to do one of those three things, you can actually make money here in the United States. There isn't a ceiling. There isn't a cultural clash difference like I've seen in other countries. Now, I'm not saying it's super easy and America is a perfect place and not all that, because I'm highly aware that I'm Caucasian and I'm a woman. But where my location was, I was in southern Missouri, and women were in the 1970s were looked on very differently than they are today. And so I did have some challenges like any entrepreneur, and I learned to work within that system. I would learn to work the cultural bias that was supposedly against me. I learned how to work with it so that it actually helped me make money.
Mm-hmm. And are these the type of things that you're now teaching with your books and with your courses?
I try to, although I don't focus so much on racial, sexual, or other stereotypes as much. What I focus on is, what are your idiosyncrasies? What are the things that you've been told are problems? Because I have found that those so-called challenges or problems, like I was a problem child, I had trouble sitting still, I had trouble staying on topic, I like to tell stories. Well, guess what? That is perfect for what I am involved in now, which is interviewing authors. I'm in the media and broadcasting business. So all of the things that were problems for me have actually become the very thing that makes me successful today. And so I actually talk a lot more on those sorts of things of, what were problems for you? What were you told you were? Like, oh, you were too much, too loud, too talkative, too whatever the TOO was. Yeah.
I love that, because I've heard so many people say like, well, like it's what you're good at. But I love that idea of just thinking of it in a sense of, what were you too much of? Just naturally, what are you too much of, and using that as leverage. So the type of people you're helping, what are some of the areas that you're able to help them kind of like uncover this, and how are they able to move forward with that information?
We're going to lump them in a very big group called creatives, because one of the things, I've written 11 books. I'm currently working on book number 12. And so I've written in 4 different genres. And so you can actually look at my social media and see these 4 very disparate demographics that interact with me. But one of the common threads is they're all creative in one form or another, even if they can. So I had to get rid of the word artistic and I had to start calling them creatives, because they don't always necessarily work with the art. So one of my favorite things is, somebody says, well, I've been told most of my life I'm too loud. And I'm like, well, have you ever been an event planner? Have you ever been one of those that stands on the stage and shouts to crowds? Do you have any interest in stand-up comedy? Not like Jerry Seinfeld or something like that, but being the warm-up actor, or getting a crowd ready for the main event and stuff like that. And he actually did get the job. So those are some of the fun things that I've really thoroughly enjoyed working with young people on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned being able to help people with their business within 4 hours a week. Can you touch a little bit about that concept?
Right. That was a book that was literally the only reason I wrote it was because of my students. So I had 286 students that were on an online course of mine. And what I had been asked to do by multi-level marketing firms, and I had several big names that were asking me to help, because in 2020, so many people lost their jobs and they were looking to multi-level marketing to assist them because they had huge networks, but they just didn't have steady employment at the time. So I was assisting them, and we ran these 286, 84, I forget the numbers actually, people through the online process. And we had 20% of them that did very well. The rest ended up getting other jobs or dropping out or going into other things, other interesting. But the 20% we followed did very well. The 4-hour-a-week system is very simple. And that, because it's simple, it's very deceptive. People don't see the benefit of it because it's like compound interest. If you stay consistent, then you will build your business. And these people stayed consistent. And that's why that 20% did so well. So you spend an hour a week where you do nothing but prospect, which is get to know people, get on Zoom, get to know people. And then the second thing is you make sure that you're doing follow-up, that after you meet these people, you actually engage with them after the, hey, great seeing you on Zoom, that you reach back around to them 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks. 3 months later. You make sure you have a system that you're following up with them, just because you never know where your business might come from or where you might be able to start a program with them. The third one is your social media, that you're going out on social media. And I only spend an hour a week. I hire a lot of people to do my social media for me. However, you get on social media and do start conversations with people. And so I set that up separately from prospecting for that very reason. And the fourth one is train yourself. Spend an hour a week training yourself. Now, this is the one most entrepreneurs like to avoid. And when I start getting a little overwhelmed, it's the one I want to drop, but I can't. And I know I can't. And that is spend an hour a week getting to know software better, updating your website, whatever. There's so many things as entrepreneurs. We wear so many different hats that there's always something more for us to learn, which is why we have a tendency to be highly creative. Visionaries as entrepreneurs is because we love learning. But unfortunately, sometimes the needs of the business will swamp out that private time that we need for our own personal scholarship.
Right. Okay. So I'd like to take it back a little bit. So you've written lots of books, you have lots of courses, you interviewed tons of people. How did this all start for you? What was the beginning and realizing that this was something that you wanted to do? And what was the beginning stage in the journey like?
It started with my master's. So I got my bachelor's in analytical biochemistry back in the day, where they didn't really know what biochemists were. They were just scary because we would combine chemistry with biology. And at the time, the sciences were very much split up. They're not as interdisciplinary as they are now. And so that was kind of scary that we were putting biology and chemistry together. And it took 10 years later, or 20, I forget, 20. Yeah, 20 years later, I went back and got my master's. And when I got my master's, people were started asking me to start teaching again. And I couldn't find textbooks that I thought were able to teach from. So I started writing my own textbooks and Xeroxing like 2 or 3 chapters out of other things and handing them off to my students. And it was that original course student group that I ended up writing the book, Money, It's Not Just for Rich People, because I noticed the longer we were in a semester together, the more the grades went down. I started talking to these students and found out they were starving because they couldn't get, they didn't know how to budget their money. And so they had spent so much at the front, they didn't have enough at the end of the semester. And so their grades were tanking because they were living on ramen and cup of soup and mac and cheese because it was inexpensive and it was really messing up their grades. So with that, I started teaching money.
Wow. What an interesting turn, like just how it's like a natural progression of doing that.
Right.
So now from there to there, now talk a little bit about like some of the work that you're doing and the clients, like how would you describe your ideal clients and how are you helping them?
So a lot of my clients start off as my students, to be quite frank. They'll take a course from me because over the last 7 years, I've offered 87 different online courses. And so with that group, they learn to trust me, that I know what I'm talking about. And so my ideal client is anyone who wants to get into podcasting or they want to broadcast their message. I work with a lot of authors, it seems, and then big business that has a launch of a product, usually books. I like to go around books. I have a soft spot in my heart for authors. So anybody who's written a book, and if they have a big business behind them or they have a corporation that would be willing to help sponsor them, then we launch that book through podcasting, and we do a series of 12 interviews. And so that's our ideal client, is somebody who has a product or service they want to launch. They have a very discrete launch window, and we work within that window as a concierge service.
Awesome. So you say that you share a lot of, let's say, like your systems and routines that have really helped you be successful. Can you touch a little bit on those and what have really?
Sure. I see them every once in a while, kind of zip through Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, and I'll see pieces and parts. And I think that's helpful, but you need to kind of have the whole system in place. So a lot of people are very familiar now with time blocking. You know, that's what I love about the digital age, is you're not having to write this stuff down on a piece of paper and then shift it and cut and paste and all that stuff. But digitally, you can get on your calendar and do some time blocking. Because if you're going to be a creative of any kind, whether it's a business, you're an author, you're an artist, you're a musician, I don't care what it is you're creating, you have got to make space for the muse to be able to talk to you. And so every day I'm sitting down, and it's usually, I get up at 4 a.m, and usually I am sitting in my chair by 5 a.m. and I am sitting there for 30 minutes writing my 750 words, or I'm drawing my next book cover, or whatever my creative project is. And the whole point of time blocking is, if you really want to live that quote, quote, ideal life, or that magnificent life, or that awesome life that everybody is always talking about, well, it's up to you to craft the time. And so I don't know about a lot of you, but I almost always had a full-time job, and I was running a side hack because that was the only way I knew how to build up my business, where I didn't have to rely on debt. I was able to create enough business that then I could make the shift over from full-time employment to being a full-time entrepreneur. And so that's the biggest system, is your time blocking. It doesn't matter what it is. So right now I'm learning how to play the piano, but I only have 30 minutes a day that I can practice. And that happens to be from 6 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. You will find me in front of a keyboard learning how to play the piano. And I'm currently at the kindergarten level. And yesterday I just learned how to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, that's so good. It's like the power of doing that. And that even goes back to that 4 hour a week,
Correct.
That compound interest, 30 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm. It's little things, and it's whatever you're interested in. Oh my gosh, do not live somebody else's life, right? It's a 24/7 job for Shelby to be Shelby and Janine to be Janine and all that kind of stuff. So what are you interested in? And I had one person say, well, I'm into rock climbing, but I don't live anywhere near that. I'm like, they got rock climbing walls everywhere. And if you're still wondering, there's always parkour. I mean, come on now, don't limit yourself on your passions just because you don't think you live in the right area of the world. That is not the way a creative handles that kind of solution, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Find a way.
Yeah, you will. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So now with what you're doing, has there been anything that you've noticed, like for people listening, that maybe they want to start in some way to start doing this more creative process? Is there one thing that you noticed that a lot of people really needed guidance on, or like one way that they can start today with this?
Right. I think the first thing is I have very specific rules for my business. So before I ever get into a business, because I've been running these businesses since I was 10. So I have rules of conduct and code of behavior for myself. Okay. You do not have to accept these rules or even adhere to them, but I do encourage you to come up with your own set of rules. So rule number 1 for me is I will not go into debt for my business. That will not happen. And that has saved me time and time again, as every time I wanted to launch something or do something and I just needed $10,000 more, or I just needed $5,000 more, and I waited, I got another piece of information that saved me money. Okay. So over and over, that has proven itself to me. Don't go into debt for your business. I don't care how good it is. Just wait and keep keep working consistently on your full-time gig until you can get your side time gig to pay your bills, right? And don't jump into business. I've seen that over and over again where people got into a financial bind. They started their own business, not realizing that that is not the way to save yourself financially, that it's like a garden. And that's why on my book, The Thriving Solopreneur has a garden with garden boots, because it's like a garden. It takes time to build it up. And most people, if they've only worked for someone else most of their life, they are unaware of that. The second rule that I have with it is it's got to be something that I am insanely passionate about. If I am not insanely passionate about, I will not have the energy and the commitment when times start really getting tough to stick with it. All right. And so you don't go in. And then the third one is I have to win, meaning I have to make money. The person I am working with has to be able to make money, like a joint venture person or somebody like yourself, like you're interviewing me. We're both learning from each other, that kind of thing. And then the listener has to win, or my client has to win. And if I don't have a win-win-win on all three of those areas, then I don't do it. And that's called relationship marketing. It takes a lot longer to grow a business with relationship marketing. But let me tell you about the strength of that foundation. Very, very strong.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what are you saying? You said something about a few minutes ago. I'm trying to think back, but that does make a lot of sense. So now with, like pushing your messages and stuff, what does that process look like? If you're, like podcasting, what do you have as the goal for that? Like, are you just trying to share the knowledge or get clients through that? Like, how does that work for you?
Well, pretty much all the above. I want to get paid because I'm a mom of 4 kids and 3 of them are in college. So there is a financial need on my side. For some reason, they want food with their meal. I don't know what's up with that. But anyhow, so the thing is when it comes to broadcasting, whether it's podcasting through media, printed matter, I don't care, however you are sharing your message, I always come at it as an educator. I always come at it as a teacher, as somebody who wants to share. Now, it's not being a teacher as in lecture, like I'm trying to pummel information into your head. It's more like I have this to share. It's up to you how you integrate it into your life. And so almost all of my broadcasts, all my content creation, almost all of that is here's what I can share with you today. If you choose to learn more, you can backtrack me and backlink it. And that's when the links and hyperlinks and all that come into it. But for the most part, I'm not one of those people that's like, buy my stuff. I don't actively engage in that form of marketing. Why? Because the level that I'm operating with people is very intimate. I'm talking to them about their money. I'm talking to them about their businesses. I'm talking to them about their books or their creative art projects. So they kind of have to get to know me and like me before they're going to hand over their cash, right? And so I'm highly aware of that. So almost all of my marketing and all my messaging is, this is who I am, this is what I believe, and here is what I have learned in, my 40 years of business. Oh my gosh, I just realized it's been a few decades.
Was a 40-year-old business entrepreneur. You look fabulous.
Oh, thank you, darling. Thank you. I'll pay you later. Thanks, Shelby.
Right. This kind of brings me, I guess, actually to my next point is you mentioned talking just about burnout. And I'm sure that is a common thing that you probably deal with a lot of people. So how can we avoid burnout? And once we're in it, what are some of the steps that we can take to really get through that?
So let's talk about avoidance, and then we'll talk about when you're in the midst of it. Because as long as I have been in business, which I just now realized 40 years, oh my gosh, that's going to keep me laughing all day. I still have times where I'm moving, like I can feel myself moving into burnout. So it takes practice. Okay. I now don't have burnout anymore. I now know how to handle it and how to work with it. But every once in a while, I'll feel how life will kind of dump on me. And I'm like, okay, I've got to get out of this. So let's talk about avoidance. How do you avoid burnout? Believe it or not, through your time blocking. I don't like to say time management. A lot of people use time management, but I like to call it time blocking because you can move the blocks around, right? You can make sure that you don't lose that creative time if you can move those blocks around on your digital calendar, which is why I love the digital age now. But one of the things to do is make sure, are you getting enough breaks? I don't know about you, but after every Zoom call, I make sure that I have at least 5 to 7 minutes so I can get up and do 3 push-ups, do some sit-ups, and then move around. I'm very physically active, and I find myself after 2020, like the rest of the world, living in front of my screen in a way I never thought I would. And because of that, I'm having to play games with my calendar and stuff to make sure that I have that time. But then there's bigger burnout where you have a project that's due. It's absolutely overwhelming. It's taking 3 times longer than you expected. You've been putting in 16-hour days. Yes, this has occurred to me. You're putting in 3 and 4 consistent 16-hour days trying to get to that launch. Make sure that when you're blocking out launches or you're blocking out these big projects, that you always give yourself the next day off, or to do just really what I like to call piddly admin stuff, like answering email or writing a blog post, or something that you find very, very easy. But give yourself literally the day off. And that's when you'll find me grabbing one of my kids. We're in summertime right now. And I'll grab one of my kids. I'm like, let's go for a picnic. Let's just get out, get out, get away from the screen. So those are ways, and everybody has their own. Like for some people, and I love this about them, there are certain individuals where, oh my gosh, I can't stand to be on Zoom. I'm going to go play my video game and go kill stuff, right? The gamers in my life, I absolutely adore them because I work with a lot of graphic designers, a lot of guys who write lore for the games. They're like, okay, how do we move them up to level 15? All that stuff, that's all part of being author and being a creative. And so sometimes I work with them, and for them, that is a break, is for them to get away from Zoom and thinking business wise. And then they go kill something on the gameplay, right? And they like to do it in a group. So there's 15 of them on there acting as 3 squads as they go about handling their strategy. So whatever works for you, that's what's most important. But I highly recommend that you keep yourself physically moving. Not physically, it doesn't have to be physically fit. We're not talking about exercise here, but that you're physically moving, that you're making sure that you're able to sleep. And if you're struggling with sleep, figure that out, okay? Because it's going to put you in bad places. And then the third one, are you spending enough quality family time or time with, like you, Shelby? Are you spending enough time for yourself? Now, in the midst of 2020, we had a lot of personal time. Some of us, right? And we're trying to get out and engage with people. But one of the things that happens with burnout is you may be more sensitive to larger groups than you are aware of. And it didn't come out until 2020 that you had that. Now, there's also the part of what happens when you're in the midst of burnout. How do you save yourself, right? And you're in the midst of a project. You've been spent 3 16-hour days. You have another 16-hour day ahead of you. And this is where I take micro breaks. It used to be in corporate America when I was working for big pharma that I would wander down to the coffee pot, not on our floor. I would walk the main campus. I'd go to another building, hit their coffee pot, and walk back. Those are things that you can do. You can do that in 5 to 7 minutes and give yourself these micro breaks because it's important that you do that. I think just knowing, oh my God, I'm in burnout. I can't do this anymore. And that's where you phone a friend. That's where I would call my buddy Shelby. Hey, you got 10 minutes? I need to sit and just complain about my life. Right? And there's no one to blame but me.
It's the worst.
That's the worst. And I think that's the thing, is we get so engaged in beating ourselves up about what we've done to ourselves that we can't think positively and dig ourselves out. And that's where friends like you, would become a life-saving grace. Yeah. So those are some of those ideas on what to do when it comes to burnout, if you're in the middle of it, or how to prevent it for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. That makes a lot of sense. And it is a big thing that I think, sorry, there's a phone ringing right now.
That's okay. This happens with business, right? We have phones that ring and you were trying to mute yourself, but that you just go with the flow again.
You just go with it. That's the whole thing. It's it's part of the process. It's the journey. You just let it happen how it's going to happen. And that's great.
Move forward.
Yeah. So now I'm curious, with what you've all done and what you're building, what is the next step? Where do you see yourself, let's say, a year from now with your business? businesses?
A year from now is going to be very different from where I am right now, because I'm also going through a change of phase. Most of the businesses that I ran, I was also homeschooling my 4 children. And so I had double duty. I had to be a mom and answer questions and math homework and science homework, and at the same time, run a business. Well, this is the first year that I have had 3 of my children in college, and one is working from home in his own office with me. So that is one of those funny things where I'm like, I'm in a change of phase. So I know I now have openings in my calendar I never thought I existed. However, I still am on the school circuit, so to speak. I'm still on the semester system, because when my kids come home from college or they want to come visit me, I clear my calendar because I want to spend time with my kids. And so that's something that is a bonus to being an entrepreneur that you don't necessarily have, but it also can cut down on your income depending upon what's happening. So I'm having to be very careful on how I schedule my launches so that my time, and so my business will look very different in that we have more clients who pay us more because we have a higher level of service with our concierge broadcasting services that we do now. But at the same time, I am working diligently to shovel off more of the systems to people that I'm training. And so you're seeing me actually distance myself from the day-to-day, and I'm now moving into that visionary role. And eventually, I hope my goal in the next couple of years is to have a general manager of the business, and then I step out except for marketing and doing the stuff I love. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. I want to backtrack a little bit. Just you mentioned about kind of like the revenue aspect and getting more. So do you have any, like for other people that are feeling the same way, do you have any goals for how you're going to plan to accomplish that?
I usually have targets. I'm going to let you know, I don't do goal setting the way they tell you to. Surprise, shock, and awe. I know most entrepreneurs, we don't do things like normal. But the thing is I have a vision board, and I have nothing but pictures on that vision board. You won't see any words or anything like that. And that vision board is how I want my life to feel. So I'll have a picture of Australia there. Why? Because I eventually want to get to Australia. When's the goal? I have no idea. I know that's not in alignment with SMART goals. You're supposed to be specific, measurable, accountable, We've all learned SMART goals, haven't we, Darren? And I know you're supposed to have all that. And that's very helpful if you're dealing with something that's a very logic-based system, that you know what's happening from moment to moment. I'm an entrepreneur. I have certain systems that work like clockwork. Those have SMART goals. I have some variables that I have no control over. Those are not my SMART goals. Those are a part of the vision board. So I have a general idea, like I know I want to make roughly $160,000 this year. And that means I need at least 3 clients, new clients a month coming in. That means I need to be on Zoom with so many people. And this is how many prospects I need. I can backtrack it that way. But there are certain elements in my life where SMART goals are not going to work. All I have is a desire and a target. And so I use the bullseye from darts or archery a lot more than goals, because I have targets, because when I hit those, I celebrate. And sometimes that target is, okay, we have an email list and it's at 988, and we want to move this sucker up to 1,700 in the next 4 months. How do we go about doing that? And then we hit that target and we celebrate. Yay, right? We made it. Woohoo. What do we do next? And I keep them short term like that because I've already got my vision. I know what kind of life I want. I want to know what kind of life I want to live. The rest is details.
I love that. Yeah, it's so true. The vision versus detail, I think, is so important. Okay, so now that everyone's listening to you, they resonate with you, where can they find you and listen to your work?
Well, there's one easy place to get a hold of me, and that is if you go to LinkedIn and go to Janine Bolon. And I believe I'm the only Janine Bolon, Bolon, that's on there. Connect with me there. I have a team that monitors my LinkedIn, and they will say, hey, How do you want to get in touch? Do you want to get on a Zoom call or what have you? Now, if you just want to kind of be a voyeur and kind of hang out and listen to me for a while, you can go to the JanineBolonshow.com, and there you'll hear me interviewing a lot of people. And that is a great place. Now, if you're an author, I'm looking for authors on the 99 Author Project. I've got to interview 99 authors by December 15th. I'm only on author number 37. So if you're an author, please reach out to me on authorpodcasting.com and you will see the 99 Author Project. And I would love to interview you. Thank you.
I love that. See, that's an actual goal. You have a due date for that one. I like it.
Yes, I do have SMART goals for variables that are within my control. Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Not all variables are within my control.
Yeah, which is life, right?
Right. Welcome to life.
Yeah, welcome to this big planet. That's what happens. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I always like to finish off these interviews, though, with one final piece of advice or something you want listeners to be thinking about after this conversation. What would it be?
Get in the habit of writing thank you notes. So before Shelby gets off, I'm going to make sure that there's an address that I can send her a thank you note, because Shelby has offered me time on her platform, and I will make sure that she knows how much I appreciate that, because I know that this platform did not come, it doesn't just happen. A lot of time, energy, and effort goes into these sorts of interviews. It is very important that anytime somebody does something nice for you, get their address and send them a thank you note. And it can be on an index card in a blank envelope. I spend anywhere from $200 to $800 a month on postage for thank you notes, letting people know they've done something nice for me. That has gotten me more clients than anything else.
Wow. Powerful stuff. Simple but powerful. I love it.
Yeah. Most of my advice is very simple, and people are like, whatever. It's not sexy. It's not sexy.
But effective. That's all that matters.
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a great chat.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Good luck.